You've been told your whole life to pursue God's presence, to seek His face, to hunger for more of Him. And you've tried. You've prayed longer, worshipped harder, fasted with intention. But here's what nobody warns you about. The more desperately you chase the feeling of God's presence, the further away He can seem. Not because He's distant, but because chasing has turned into performing. And performing has replaced the one thing God actually responds to: trust. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right but still feel spiritually empty, this might be why. Drop a comment if you've ever felt closer to God when you weren't trying so hard. Let's be honest about what's really happening. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that feeling God's presence is the sign that He's near. That if worship gives you chills, if prayer makes you cry, if you sense something tangible during a quiet time, then God showed up. And if you don't feel anything, then maybe you didn't pray hard enough. Maybe your heart wasn't open. Maybe you're doing something wrong. So you try again. You extend the worship playlist. You pray with more intensity. You look for the goosebumps, the warmth, the peace, the breakthrough moment. And when it doesn't come, you assume the problem is you. Not your effort, not your heart, but your lack of spiritual sensitivity, your inability to connect. Here's the trap. You've turned God's presence into a feeling you need to generate. And the moment you do that, you stop trusting Him and start managing your own spiritual experience. You're no longer resting in who He is. You're working to recreate a moment you once had. That's not intimacy. That's repetition. And it quietly trains you to believe that God only matters when you can feel Him. So what's actually happening here? You're confusing presence with evidence. You're treating your emotions like a spiritual thermometer, assuming that if you feel something, God is close, and if you don't, He's not. But that's not how God works. His presence isn't conditional on your ability to perceive it. He doesn't show up when you finally get the formula right. He's already there. The pressure you feel isn't coming from Him. It's coming from the expectation that you should be able to summon a spiritual experience on demand. Think about it this way. If someone you loved told you they'd spend time with you, but the entire time they were anxious about whether they were feeling the relationship correctly, would that feel like intimacy? No. It would feel like performance. And that's what happens when we treat time with God like an emotional audition. We stop being present with Him because we're too busy monitoring whether we're feeling the right things. Here's the shift. God's presence is not a reward for spiritual intensity. It's a reality you trust even when you feel nothing. Jesus didn't say, "I'll be with you if you worship well enough." He said, "I am with you always." Not sometimes. Not when you've prayed long enough. Always. That's not based on your effort. That's based on His word. And here's what that means practically. The times you feel closest to God might not be during worship at all. It might be in the middle of a normal conversation, or while you're washing dishes, or when you're too tired to perform and you just say, "I don't know what to pray, but I trust you." Those moments matter more than we realize. Because in those moments, you're not trying to make something happen. You're just trusting that He's already there. Look at how Jesus interacted with people. He didn't ask them to work themselves into a spiritual state before He showed up. He met them where they were. Tired, doubting, confused, distracted. And He didn't wait for them to feel His presence. He was just present. That's the model. Not chasing, not performing, just trust. If this is shifting something for you, go ahead and hit the like button. It helps others find this message too. So what does this look like in practice? First, stop treating prayer like it only counts if you feel something. That belief is exhausting, and it's not biblical. Prayer isn't about generating an emotion. It's about talking to someone who's listening. Some of the most powerful prayers are the ones where you feel absolutely nothing. Because in those moments, you're not relying on how you feel. You're relying on who He is. Second, stop reopening the same prayer because you didn't feel peace the first time. If you prayed about something and gave it to God, leave it there. The urge to keep praying the same thing isn't faith. It's anxiety pretending to be spirituality. Trust doesn't mean you feel settled. It means you said what you needed to say, and now you're choosing to believe He heard you. Third, notice when you're performing for a feeling instead of resting in His presence. If you're extending your worship time because you're trying to reach a certain emotional state, stop. If you're forcing yourself to pray longer because you feel guilty for not feeling close to God, stop. He doesn't want your performance. He wants your honesty. "I don't feel you right now, but I trust you're here," is a more powerful prayer than 30 minutes of trying to manufacture the right emotion. And here's the simplest shift of all. Start recognizing His presence in the ordinary. Not just in the moment you cry during worship, but in the peace you didn't expect. In the conversation that helped you see something clearly. In the random encouragement that showed up exactly when you needed it. God's presence isn't always loud. Most of the time, it's quiet. And if you're only looking for the loud moments, you'll miss Him entirely. Here's what this comes down to. God isn't impressed by how hard you chase Him. He's moved by how much you trust Him. And trust doesn't look like desperation. It doesn't look like striving. It looks like rest. It looks like showing up without an agenda. It looks like believing He's present even when you feel nothing. The pressure to feel God's presence isn't coming from Him. It's coming from the idea that your faith is only valid if it's emotionally charged. But that's not what He asks for. He asks for trust. And trust is quieter than we've been taught to expect. If you want more content that challenges shallow faith and helps you build something real, subscribe. We're cutting through the noise every week. Stop chasing what's already with you. Start trusting who's already there.